The Badgers have suffered arguably their biggest transfer portal loss ever. Meanwhile, the football team and several players continue to impress. All that and more on a packed episode.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, Chucky Hepburn enters the transfer portal. What does this mean for the basketball team, and what does Gard need to do to replace him? Can Gard actually compete in the NIL era, and was this loss on him? Spring football continues. We discuss some of the new observations that we've heard about from practice. And we're also going to have a little fun this week and do some over-unders on 2024 football. Way too early over-unders. Justin, we are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button or the follow button so you know when we make new content. Justin, before we get into the sad part about Chucky Hepburn, because he is no longer going to be here, we have to just give him a lot of credit. The guy, 3-year starter, started every game he played in, scored over 1,000 points for this team, just under 10 points a game, career field goal percentage of 40%, 313 assists, 161 steals. What does this man, how has this man been for this program? How do you characterize his time here before we start talking about how awful it is that he's no longer going to be here?
People are going to undervalue what he actually was here, and he had his flaws, but he was a really good, traditional point guard. And this is something that people just don't seem to understand because he wasn't scoring a ton. But the things that Chucky did really well, people don't value anymore. He was really good at controlling pace. He was really good at not turning the ball over a ton. So he took decent care of it. Some of the stuff was outside of his control when it came to the offensive stuff that he was forced into. But this is a major loss. I'm just going to be blunt with it. There are going to be people that be like, oh, we can just chuck a point guard in there and we'll be fine. No, we won't. That's not how this works. Chucky was actually pretty darn good. There's a lot of guys who are scoring points and stuff like that that have no feel for the game and just don't understand situations. Chucky was pretty good at the situational stuff that a lot of other guys just don't seem to have a grasp for. And that can really affect you. If you're a point guard that gets sped up when a team starts playing tough D, that's a problem. That's how teams start to unravel. And that's something that a lot of point guards in today's game aren't good at.
And I know that some of his defensive efficiency numbers went down a little bit this year, but man, that guy, he was a clutch defender. He averaged 1.6 steals a game, by the way. In 103 games, 161 steals. That's incredible. And we were averaging over a steal and a half a game, and his assist to turnover ratio was basically 3-1 for his entire career. Started every game he ever played in. He's going to be missed, man. Chucky Hepburn, there were times where we complained about his fadeaway shots at the end of the shot clock and all kinds of things. But man, he was reliable. He was dependable. He had control of the game. He had control of everyone around him. And when he needed to turn up the defense at the end of a game on that point guard, whoever he was guarding, man, he could do it. And there were so many times where he won us games. He absolutely won us games. He became the floor general this year that we wanted him to be because we knew we had more offense coming in with Storr, and he did that. There was certainly a stretch of the season where he obviously did not score much at all, which hurt us. Mm-hmm. But this is going to be a loss. I agree with you, Justin. This is a huge, huge loss for us. I mean, the bottom line is the question is, and Ryan asked this on Lockdown earlier this week, and I'm curious to your take on it. Do we need to replace the point guard? Do we actually need a point guard to replace him? Or can you do it with Freitag? Of course, we got Blackwell. We've still got McGee. I mean, so you have enough backcourt action now. Freitag's going to be a freshman, right? But he's going to play right away. We talked about him ad nauseum. We know how good he's going to be and how excited we are about him. Do you need to replace the actual point guard position, in your opinion?
The things that we've just talked about with Chucky, I'm not sure that Freitag's going to be good at. And that's where some of the concern is with me. I think he'll score. I'm not sure how efficient he'll be. but I'm not sure how great he'll be at running the offense and understanding the time and situation that you'd want if you want to have a good season. There are many true freshman point guards that come in and just set the world afire. It doesn't happen. They normally grow into their role over time. And if you have a really strong cast around them, you can kind of hide them a little bit. But I mean, I think we'd agree. We don't exactly have a world beater cast that is going to be around that. It feels like there's going to be a lot of pressure on Freitag to create if he does come in. And I'm not sure that that's fair to have him come in day one and be like, all right, here you go. You're the only guy that can really create your own shot. Good luck. Because they're going to just really hunt him if that's the case. Teams are just come at him and give him a bunch of different defensive looks in attack.
Right. I mean, there's certainly no doubt that we need help, especially on the scoring side of the ball. Mikey says Freitag will be better at point than Chucky.
No,
I think Freitag's gonna be really good. Okay, but I don't know. Like, he's gonna be a much better scorer. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think the rest is we got to wait and see. I mean, we don't really know if he's going to be a better point guard. Chucky was a really good point guard. There are so many things, like you said, Justin. I think you hit the nail on the head. They're not things that necessarily show up even on the stat sheet. Like, he had control of the game that I think is understated. I think you said it right. He's basically undervalued. But for a lot of diehard Badger fans like us and a lot of people that are listening to this, he's not undervalued. He was a great player that deserves all the flowers, and certainly is a guy that is a legendary player for us in the sense that, I mean, any guy that can come on campus and start right away as a freshman and start every single game he's ever played in, that's pretty special. So, look, I think Freitag's going to be really good. Do I think we need to replace the point guard position? Yes, I do. Do I think that Freitag is going to be okay enough to do that? And along with McGee, and then you've got you've got Blackwell right there. So we'd probably be okay, but I don't want that. I want the one replaced with a veteran, preferably, that can come in and start right away. And when Freitag's ready to start, Freitag starts. If it's right away, that's fine. But you got to have a veteran presence back there, a point guard, because like this conference is only going to get harder. We know who's coming into this conference now. The schedule is going to be brutal next year. It's going to be brutal every year. I think you do need to replace the point guard position. And amongst, by the way, almost every other position, he's still got to replace a 3. He's got to replace a 4, probably needs a 5. I mean, it's going to be a heck of an offseason. And by the way, 7 people have left, 0 have come in. Do you, Justin, put this loss on Greg Gard? Do you blame Greg Gard for this? Because I really don't.
So before we get to that, I want to say Mikey's comment here. Chucky 12th in assists in the Big Ten. And what I want to say to that is, you need to look at the type of offense that the team plays. Wisconsin does not typically have high assist number point guards because they're not a drive and kick offense. They don't do ISO. They don't do a ton of pick and roll. And because of that, they don't have huge assist numbers out of the point guard. That does not mean that you're not a good point guard. What it means is that you don't get set up a lot of the times to get easy assists that some other guys have, or just you're not the focal point where you're using high usage and being forced to be the one to make the pass. So he can be very effective and not have huge assist numbers.
Agreed. So do you think Greg Gard's to blame for this? Be honest now. I know you have feelings about this.
I have feelings about him in general, and I think that one of my factors with regards to this is simply this. There's been a lot of people saying that it's all about money now. And I will say, I'll push back a little bit on that and say, yes, money is a major factor, but you still need to be a good recruiter. And part of the difference is if all things are equal, they're going to go to the more charismatic person. And we've seen that happen before. Heck, we've heard news that one of the things is that Wisconsin will match whatever offer for one of the players that they had out there. And my gut instinct on that is, well, what if you're matching and they just like the other coach better? Because I just think that's in the beauty pageant. When it comes to that, I just don't think he wins. And I think I look at it when it comes to Chucky, I think that there's a chance that Chucky kind of took a look at what this team was. And when Fiddler left or wasn't going to potentially choose Wisconsin, I think he kind of looked at it and said, I don't think we're going to be a great team this next year. And I can find somebody who I think has a chance to be a really good this next year and make some money on my way out and have an opportunity to have a great senior season playing for a team that's maybe a dark horse or something like that. And I think that for me, I understand that logic, him looking at it, because Wisconsin, whatever people think, was not going to build a roster that's going to be a team that's going to go deep into March. That's asking way too much.
I think money is a bigger factor than maybe you're saying. I hear you.
I think it is. I definitely think that it played a role. I just think that there's other things too. Like I think it's such a cop out by people saying that it's just flat out money. That's all it is.
Okay, but
there are other circumstances that are a part of it.
Okay, so if NIL was not a thing, if these guys were not going to get paid, would Chucky have left? Do you think? I don't think so. I think he's leaving because he's probably going to get $750,000.
I think that was one of the things that got him thinking about it. But I think you start to pay more attention to the things that are bothering you when that offer comes into play, and you start to look at your situation and say, this could be a struggle here. We're probably not going to be super great. We're relying potentially on a bunch of young players to come in and fill roles for, things. When Fiddler didn't come in, I think he kind of looked at it and was like, I don't know how competitive this roster is really going to be. So am I better off taking the money and potentially playing for a team that's also probably going to be better? I think that's kind of the logic that ends up going into it. Like if you start looking at it and you're like, yeah, I can make some money here and I can play for a better team. Like Wisconsin's done this. I'm sure we've done it in football and stuff like that, where we grab guys for NIL, where it's like we're throwing some money at them, but it's also, Wisconsin has a chance to probably have a decent season this next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to read because you're right. At the end of the day, we don't really know what he's thinking, and it probably is a mix of both. But I'll tell you, I don't think he leaves if the money's not there. Easton Parks, thank you, by the way, all of you that are joining us live. Thanks for listening. And Easton Parks says, I don't blame Gard with Chuck, but Gard doesn't help for sure. Evan Malone says the blame is on both the NIL and Gard. Keep those comments coming in, guys. We'll put up some more during the show as well. And I've already got some starred for later. I think that he's okay. So right now his values are at 750,000. That's what's being reported. We're not going to pay that. And I don't necessarily think we should. It's really hard to put this on Gard because these players, like Chucky Hepburn's probably not an NBA player. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I 100% would agree with that.
So he's probably going to play some pro ball overseas potentially, right? So there's money there, of course, but he's going to get, let's for the sake of discussion, $750,000 right now to go play for whether it's Michigan State or Illinois or Louisville or wherever he's going to go. Like, I mean, that's awfully hard for a guy who really has no true prospects to play pro ball. Like really, I mean, he's not guaranteed to play professional basketball. To get that kind of money as a senior in college before you start whatever you're going to do in the rest of your life, that's awfully hard to turn down.
It is. Well, I don't necessarily know that your value is inherently tied to what your pro prospects are, though. It's like, what is your value to the team that you're coming to in terms of it? If you end up being the difference maker for a team that basically sets them on the odds-on favorite in conference, I think that's worth paying a guy that kind of money if you think that he can be the missing piece for you.
Agreed.
And there's probably some teams that look at it that way.
Right. And I agree with you. What I'm saying is like, he doesn't have guaranteed money for playing basketball.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So I agree with that 100%.
The fact that he's like, the fact
this
that he
life-changing money.
Exactly. The fact that he left to make that kind of money, to me, it's like, I get it. I hate the system. And we're going to talk about that. Like, I really just don't understand why this is like 1 year. We're talking about this all right now. In 2 years, it's like, this will change. It's going to get better. There has to be some kind of plan in place and system in place, whether it's contracts or whatever the case is, because this really can't stand. That being said, I don't put this on Gard. I'm sorry. I just don't. And I know a lot of people are really upset about it. It's one more sort of like, just nail in the coffin of Gard for many people. And I hear that, but listen, NIL and Gard are just not really in the same side. Like, you can't, in my opinion, you can't put that on there. The NIL situation, like, so the best thing about NIL is that the players are getting paid, which is a good thing because they've obviously, like the schools made a ton of money off their backs for a while. Now the schools continue to make money. NIL isn't funded by the school. Like all this money that comes in from, like TV revenue and the Big Ten conference and all this stuff. That's not what's paying the kids. It's boosters. It's people that pay money to the varsity collective. I donate to the varsity collective a little bit. Like I'm sure everybody does a little bit here and there, whether it's you buying the beer or whatever. There's ways to get money to the collective, and that's where the punt money's coming from. So basically, if you're blaming Gard for this, you're saying that the boosters didn't provide enough money, as you're going to blame Gard. Like I hate that system, by the way. I don't understand why the school that brings in all this money should have to be paying for some of these players to make money. I don't like that system, but you can't put this on Gard. What I can put on Gard is what he does in the transfer portal, which by the way, to date is 0 players, right? And we've lost out on some of our targets, like Terrence Edwards is going to Louisville. They've got, and the Omar Ballo guy, the guy that I really wanted, is going to go to Indiana. There's Mike Woodson, by the way, is just blowing things up. Indiana's spending all kinds of money, but they're a basketball school. They don't have any football money. So I just can't put it on Gard here. I really don't put this on him. I just feel like this is an unfortunate circumstance that is basically the result of what is happening in college basketball. Gard has to replace him, and he has to recruit better, and he has to get people that they can afford to pay. But is it really Gard's fault that the NIL budget isn't that big? I don't think that's Gard's fault. Now, you could say that, well, the boosters aren't happy with Gard, thus they're not paying for it. But how often can you just keep going back to the same guys asking for money? That's where I'm at.
I'm a prime example of that, because I have considered paying, and until I can actually say it's going towards the football program, I refuse to actually put money in there as long as Greg Gard's head coach. I just don't believe in him as a coach, and I'm not going to fund him to piss away my money. And that's how I feel about it. Like, I don't trust him to get value in the players that he's capable of recruiting for me to look at it and say, it's worthwhile to hand you a checkbook and say, this is what I can do for you. Because the guys that I think that he's capable of bringing in, I think some of them are going to be wasted money. I want guys, if we're going to be bringing in guys that are potentially going to be guys that push us over the top, we're not recruiting well enough for me to look at it and say, okay, I'm okay with you having carte blanche here and being able to just say, we're going to get these 2 guys and they're going to be the finishing pieces we need to win the Big Ten and to be a dark horse national title team. We're so far removed from that right now that I look at it and I'm like, why am I handing you a bunch of money to get guys to just fill out your roster? Because that's kind of what we're doing. Like, I've thought about this, and even the people that, like, the wish list of people that we're looking at with like Trimble and some of the other guys that people wanted us to go after, I'm like, the people that you guys are throwing out there, unless we get Angel, we're not picking up the lost production that we have losing Store, Chucky, and Wall. I'm like, that's 37 points or whatever it was, this last year that we need to make up with 3 guys. That's a lot of production. And that's not easy. Like, a guy like Trimble, has he even averaged double digits in his career? I don't know if he has. I don't think he has. Angel has.
I'm not sure of his numbers. Angel
but
has,
I don't like getting a point guard that can go out there and get you 10 points per game, and getting another guy that's 10. That means you need somebody that's got to get 17 to get Store.
A lot of great comments. Let's bang some of these out. Zach Bart says, NCAA needs to address the current state of the NIL because it's turning into the biggest pockets by the best teams. NIL was meant to compensate players, not meant to turn into an MLB bidding war. Winning Gambler says, on a cheerier note, Gard got extended for the year. Yes, Gard did get a 1-year extension, much to the dismay of my co-host, Justin Jolka. Dark Ray says, I warned you guys that we might not get to 10 wins next season. Be prepared. It's going to go along with this one, and I want to get your take on this, Justin. Michael Wagner says, as the roster stands right now, what is the over-under on Big Ten wins? He says, I say 3.5. I think that's a little nuts. I think it'll be higher than that, even as the roster sits right today, because you've got Free Tech coming in, you've got Blackwell, you've got with
the roster we have right now. We're not getting over 3.5 wins. That would be so much pressure put on Free Tag, and then like Blackwell would have to play out of his mind this next year. He'd have to make a jump to like 15 points per game. You'd have to have McGee basically eat up Chucky's missing production, and Klesma would have to play like how he finished the season. So And you still don't have a power forward. Like you're not playing Carter Gilmore there.
That to me is, and we're going to get into that after this, but yeah. So a couple more comments here. Bo Dragon says, how come JMU didn't need all that money to stomp the Badgers? There you go, Bo Dragon. And Tyler Strieber, good question. This is a fair point here. Tyler says, Rajiv, the portal is directly tied to NIL. You can't say Gard isn't to blame for NIL, then say he's accountable for the portal. That doesn't jive. Okay, that's a fair point, Tyler. And I hear you on this. Ultimately, we've got a budget. Okay. So Greg Gard has a budget and he has to operate within that budget and get something, because there is some money in the portal for him to use to go get money and to go get players in the portal. So for me, it's about, can he recruit those? Now you're right. If it's ultimately about money, but we have to obviously take that budget and say, okay,
be able to sell.
Right. We've got $500,000 on that we're going to use on one big score. Maybe it's $1 million total, whatever the case is. He's got to bring those guys in that he can afford. I recognize that he can't bring in anyone because you're right. It's the money that's not really in his control. But whatever that budget is, he's got to spend it well. And that, I think, where I was going with it. But it's a fair point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that has to be said.
And here's my other part that I want to put in on that is that I don't want this to be leaning on and just being like, we're going to open the checkbook and that's how we recruit. Because if that's the case, then what the hell are you as a recruiter? Like, if you're just going to chuck money at a kid and try to be the highest bidder, you're not doing your job as a recruiter. Like, you need to be efficient with it and try to do your best job to win them over without making it just completely financial based. Now, it may end up going to that, but at some point you also have to provide some value as a recruiter. Otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean,
I look at it kind of like Fickle on the football side. How many guys have we lost in football that we wanted to keep? Zero at this point. I don't think there's anybody, and that has to do with people buying into his vision.
Agreed. This is the biggest gut punch that you would agree, right? This is the biggest loss we've ever had in the portal. Like, I think truly, even either sport. Is it? Can you remember a player that, like,
the kid that went to Iowa from Wisconsin in basketball? I can't remember his name now off the top of my head. He was the one that I was under Bo.
It's not Bohannon, obviously not. He's his brother, but anyway. But I
mean, here, and then we got.
I know you're talking. Was it Oki or
no? It wasn't Oki. It was he was the one that when Decker came in that we lost.
I can't remember it, but anyway,
he was a player. He had value. Like, he would have been a really good bench piece for us.
Okay, Ryan Willie says
it was not Oki, but Utah. Yeah,
Utah.
You're Utah.
There you go. Thank you, Tyler. I think that, like, I mean, in this sort of modern era of the portal, if you will, when you can just leave whenever you want, go wherever you want, I think this is the biggest kind of gut punch that we've really ever faced, and it's tough. But I mean, okay, so let's kind of talk about what we need now. So you mentioned some of the targets. The name Jaden Shutt is out there now from Duke. Tyrese Hunter from Texas is another name. Of course, there's who the guy that you mentioned earlier? Now I just forgot.
Seth Trimble,
but there was the other the UMass guy.
Oh, what's the UMass guy? I can't remember who that was.
I don't know. Angel, yeah. He's not UMass.
He was Stanford.
Yeah. He's Stanford. So, okay, let's start here position-wise. Now that Chucky's gone, what positions do we need?
Well, I think you need point guard and power forward for sure. You can play some games with it, and you can shift over Blackwell to play an undersized small forward. But
I don't really
love it.
Blackwell
but you can make it work.
Blackwell
can't make it work by playing anyone else at power forward.
But he can't be that's fair. But Blackwell, to me, can't be the starting three. You got to have a three. I think you need a 3 and a 4.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, if you have to, you can make it work. Like, we had years where we've gone 3 small guards and then bigs. It's happened here before. I mean, look at the year before the first run, not the first Final Four run. Didn't we play 3 small guards for that? It was basically who was it? Koenig wasn't on that, or didn't play a major role. He was reserve, but
so if we don't get, so you're saying bare minimum you need a 4, right? That's your bare minimum.
You need a 4 and a point guard. I do not trust what we have right now. Like, you need somebody that's experienced in playing heavy minutes.
Gosser, Bo Dragon says. So yeah, so we get a point guard. Then we have Klesmit at 2. You're saying Blackwell can play 3. You need a 4, and then of course you've got Crowell / Winter at the 5. So I still think you get 4 is 100% agree. To me, 4 and 3 are really where it's at. Now I agree. I said you need a point guard, and I do want to get a point guard, but I really think that you got to have a 3 and a 4 because I don't want Blackwell to play the 3. I want a guy that's a little longer, a little more athletic. Then you can have Blackwell still coming in and playing the 3 occasionally, can play the 2, of course. Then I think you're okay. Because even if you don't get a point guard, let's say you don't get a point guard and you get a 3 and a 4, I'm not saying I would be happy because I want that point guard, but I would live with that because you got to have the power forward. Listen, I'm actually really shocked that there's not one already in here. To me, it's a little ridiculous that you don't have anybody yet. You've already lost 7 players. Meanwhile, you look at schools like Indiana and other Big Ten schools. By the way, if those who haven't heard, Connor Segian is going to Nebraska, so we'll get to see him in the Big Ten next year. Yikes. Probably a good move for him, but hopefully he does well. But I mean, I really think you got to get a 3, Justin. You need another athletic wing.
I won't deny that. I'm saying the 2 most important are point guard and 4.
I would
say you need it.
I would say
you're replacing 3 starters.
So we both agree a 4 is most important. You would say a point guard, and I would say a 3. Or to me, that's the number 2 position we need is a 3. But we'll see. Anything else on the Chucky Hepburn transfer that you want to talk about before we get into our other favorite sport?
No, not really. I mean, it is what it is at this point. I'm really curious to see how he fill out the roster right now as things are standing. He's going to have to hit some home runs because I do not necessarily see a path to us having a roster that's comparable to what we even had last year. And that was a 21-win team. So if we're heading backwards, and it seems like a lot of the teams in the Big Ten are loading up,
yeah,
we are in trouble. And I think we're looking at missing the tournament again. And if he misses the tournament,
he's out.
I think you're done. Yeah. Like you can't afford to have a down season after a awful first round exit where you got manhandled by a mid-major 13 seed.
God, 12 seed. But yeah, I think that it's definitely, I'm really happy that there's a football season that's going to start before basketball starts again, because I don't know. Well, I can't take the coming on this show with you talking basketball. I mean, we need football because it is brutal. I mean,
am I wrong though? Like my takes.
I didn't mean it because of you. I just meant like the it's just draining.
Talking
about this basketball team is draining.
Any of it. It's stressful. Like sitting there trying to think of like ways to fix it and knowing that it's not going to be handled. Like that's the part that's the most frustrating, is like you have answers that you think you've kind of come up with and you're like, it doesn't matter what I think, because for whatever reason, other people don't see it the same way.
We'll end the basketball discussion on this note from Tyler Strieber, which I think is you're definitely going to agree with this one. Sometimes it's just time for a new voice, and I think that time is fast approaching.
I think we have never hit a point in college basketball where having somebody who can sell is more important. That's a combination of money and a coach that knows how to sell a program and a vision is at an all-time high. Recruiting is bigger than being a great coach right now, because you can build a roster that can be really good in one off season. You don't have to wait 3 years to build a team anymore with the way that the portal is. Now, ideally, you're still going to recruit your high school kids and grow, but you also need a coach that can keep those guys in your room, which is part of the other aspect of being able to sell.
Well, to be fair, let's give him credit for keeping Freitag in the room so far, because, Freitag hasn't left yet. Doesn't look like he's going to leave. I mean, he's pretty excited. There's been several reports coming out where he's ready to play. He obviously knows about the Chucky stuff. And look, we're looking forward to seeing him. And I think that it's a new era, right? We're going to need a lot of changes, but ultimately the money's got to come in for him to use it. So let's see how he uses the money that he does have. But Greg Gard, if you're listening, please get some players. Give me a 3 and a 4 so we can get going with this roster.
Before we get to this, I just want to throw this out there real quick. Ryan Wiley, would Tony Bennett be a potential replacement? No. Just as flat as I can say, if you're going from guard, you're not going to a guy who's also he He probably recruits a little bit better, but I don't think that he fixes what ails this program right now. You needed somebody that can get an influx of energy, kind of like what happened with Fickle with football, who provides some energy and some just oomph to the program.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Let's go on to brighter things. Spring football has now completed 10. Is it 10 practices? I believe 10 practices. Yeah, that's right. We've heard a lot of new things and a lot of good stuff. I want to start here though, Justin. This is something that Luke Fickell said. And so last year, there weren't a lot of live snaps that were happening in spring practice. And this year, he's changed that. He says that, he understood that that was a hole that he found in his coaching last year, and he needed to make a change. Here's the quote. All of a sudden, you go live and your fundamentals go out the window because in your mind, it's just like, finally, we get to play live. It's not something we get to do as often. We did it 0 times last year, I think, in spring and other than the spring game in the second half, and we didn't do it much in fall camp. And then we get to game 1, and we recognize that we're not very good tacklers. We're really poor in space. We don't hold on to the football well enough when we're in live situations. We were 120th in the country in fumbles lost. That came from The Athletic. Jesse Temple does phenomenal work on The Athletic. If you're not someone who subscribes to that, that was one of his articles. It was Luke Fickell's quote, but it did come from him, so credit to Jesse Temple for that. Justin, what are your thoughts on that? So obviously the discussion there is injuries are obviously possible when you playing more live snaps. He's done it this spring, and we did see the tackling was an issue last year. It was one of our biggest issues when the season started. We were on the reaction shows and in this show talking about how bad it looked, and that was something that I think woke Luke Fickell up. I really like this. I know there's a balance. He went on in this quote to talk about how there is a balance between people getting injured. It is a risk, but listen, you got to know what you have and you got to be able to correct the issues. So I'm all about seeing more live snaps. We've heard that from the journalists that have been there. It's clearly a thing that's changing this year for spring. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's the right move?
I just don't know how you can get the energy level into the practice the way you want it when you don't know, when guys aren't finishing. Like I assume that they were doing at least some live period stuff where they were doing hitting. But I think you have to do that if you really want to see how guys are finishing plays. And that's just a matter of, you don't want to see all your players get lit up, but you want to see how you want to kind of take a look at things and see how does this really actually look when we run this. Even same thing with offensive plays. You kind of want to know what happens when guys get physical and they're bouncing off each other kind of out there. Is like, does the play work the way you kind of drew it up? And I think that was a failure, and I'm glad that they corrected it. But the really poor in space thing, I think we noticed that week 1. We saw the linebackers were really struggling with that, and they, to their credit, they did a massive overhaul of that, and it sounds like they basically hit on pretty much everybody. So I'm glad to see that we learned from that. But yeah, it was definitely something that I think you do need to balance it and make sure that you're not getting injured, but you definitely need to do it because I think you need your guys ready to be physical too.
Right. I was texting with Ryan before the show, and he said, I think we need it, but everybody is going to be pissed if you have a Lee Evans type injury.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a fair point. And if there is a big injury like that happens, I'm not going to be, and I responded and just said, but like after how bad we tackled last year, we needed that. And I'm not going to be one that's upset about that. I'm not going to be like, oh, I can't believe you're having them do live snaps in practice. Like you need this. It was a hole that we had last year. So kudos to Luke Fickell. Once again, he just continues to impress me and impress us. And we've heard a lot of good things coming out of the spring. Tyler Van Dyke has had a good couple of practices. And that was something that you had shared with me also yesterday, something that you had read. It looks like he's kind of taken over a little bit there. Now he's still splitting time with Locke. There's still kind of that back and forth, but it's nice to see him getting into Longo's system more, which is what we expected, right? It's going to take time for him to kind of get acclimated to what Longo's doing. It looks like things are hitting well. Looks like Trech is playing well. That little combo, Justin, looks like it can be pretty solid. And I'm going to put up this comment here from Robert Sorensen from earlier. Trech agrees with Justin. That's correct, by the way. Trech was listening to Ryan Herring's show and sure enough wrote in and said, yes, I'm going to get those 40 catches. Because as you know, Justin has claimed that he's taken the over on 40 catches for Trech. I took the under. Sorry, Trech. I just, I feel like I'm going to regret this. And I'm okay with that, by the way. I'm glad to be wrong if he has over 40 catches. How do you feel about these two? TVD and Trech, man, it could be quite a little dynamic duo.
I think I think that to be fair, right off the bat, I'm going to say Pauling is going to be the number one dynamic duo. Like Trech is going to eat because Pauling is going to draw a lot of attention, and that's going to open some things up for him. And what I think that when I look at this, I actually think that 40 is pretty easily possible, and a lot of it has to do with, remember all those throws we had at the running backs last year where we threw out of the, stuff like that.
Yep.
I think there's going to be a lot of more of those little 5-yard routes and stuff like that. It's just going to be Trech and man beaters.
Yeah.
Picking up 5 yards here, 8 yards there, picking up first downs, because he's going to be able to shake free of guys that easily. And I think that that's a lot of what's going to happen instead of these, throwing out into the flat to a running back.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think if he gets 40, I will be very happy. And you're right about that. I think that, especially when you have 2 slot receivers,
he's going to be the safety
time.
valve.
Yeah, that's true, and they're both going to be incredible. We're going to do some over unders. We'll get to the other guys on that receiving line in a little bit. Bryson Green and Quincy Burrows also are people that have looked really good, and I think Bryson Green is a guy that like I said last year, obviously had a lot of hope coming into last year. He didn't impress as much early, but he kind of popped a little late, and I think he played really well, especially in the bowl game. I think Bryson Green, we talk a lot about the slot, and rightfully so with Pauling and Trech, but the outside guys, I mean, you talk about a guy that has ball skills, one more year of learning, one more year in Longo's system. I think Bryson Green could have a really, really good season. And I feel like we're not talking about him as much because obviously Pauling had the numbers last year, and Trech is kind of like that young sort of the guy that the sexy talk that everyone's talking about. But I think Bryson Green and Quincy Burrows, like, kudos to all the guys at the receiving room, clearly having a pretty good spring.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how the outside receivers eat up catches this year. I'm curious what kind of numbers we actually see from those spots.
Yeah.
As we saw last year, it's not an area that had a ton of production. So there could be some balancing out, but I think we actually end up throwing more than last year this year, simply because I think the offense will be better. Like it can't be much worse. Like we average 23 points a game. Like if you get more opportunities and are actually more productive, you're going to throw the football more. I wouldn't be shocked if the passing yards go up 50 yards a game.
Yeah. Speaking of receivers, Tyler Schieber asks, I want your take on this. Does KBJ contribute this year at all? Or is this going to be a redshirt year for him? What do you think, Justin? You think Canberry Johnson plays?
I think he'll be a redshirt year. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a couple of catches here and there, but I would be pretty surprised if you're going to put him in over Trech or Pauling. I mean, those two are going to potentially, like, they could be the two of the better slot guys in the entire conference.
100% agree. I think when you look at our slot lineup with those two guys, I don't think there's going to be a team in the Big Ten that has 2 better slot receivers than those two. Because obviously we're pretty high on Trech. Defensively, you probably heard the D line's been making a bit of a splash in practice the last couple of days. Elijah Hills, Willer. I mean, are you based on what you've read and what you've seen so far, do you feel like you have any more confidence in the D line going into coming out of the spring?
I will have no idea until I see him out on the field. Like I think the offensive line is actually going to be pretty good this year because I think Blazek is a stud coach. I actually think Whitlow is a very good coach. If he can get them to be solid, that's all I'm really looking for out of this year. Just know what you're supposed to do and do it. I don't need the flash plays from you. If we can get pressure from the edges and from the linebackers up the middle, great. Just don't be a eyesore out there in the middle and be able to make some plays like where you're just assignment sure and stop teams from being able to gash us on the ground. Because that's really all I really need from the defensive line.
Yeah, and Curtis Neal looks to be having a good spring. Certainly, Hills and Willer looking pretty good, and JTJ. I think that we have enough players to make it okay. I don't think it's going to be great. We've talked about this many times before. I would have liked someone else potentially, but for what we have in the linebacking core that's behind them, who also looks to be shining a little bit in practice, I think we should have enough. Kudos to Daryl Peterson. He seems to have a good week. A name popped up in what I was reading. I'm going to turn over to you and see if there's anything else that you want to talk about from what you've read about it. Amari Snowden is a name that I've been waiting to hear from, and he looks like he's playing corner from what I've been reading. I like that. He's playing with the twos. He got in with the twos this week. Look, you've heard me say before, Amari Snowden, the physical tools that guy has, the size that he brings at cornerback. Wow. You've already got, DeCluna on the young line. You've got Delancey, you've got Forker, and you've got Rico. So many cornerbacks. Not a lot of space for him there, but I love to hear that he's getting time with the twos because I think he really has that ability to grow to that position. So I'm happy to finally, I've been waiting for something to come out about Amari Snowden. Nick Osen is who wrote about him. So kudos to that. And yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Anyone else, Justin, that you've read about this week that you want to get into?
He was a big one for me too. Just hearing that he, it was great. I listened to the Paul Haynes interview, and it was exactly what we talked about with whether or not he'd be able to make it at corner. It's all his feet. Are his feet quick enough for him to be able to change direction and be able to run? Because long range, if they're just running fly routes, I think he'll be fine. But in the short area where guys are making cuts on him, can he get up to speed fast enough to be able to stay with somebody? Because if they separate and just eat him alive on slants and stuff like that, then he's not really useful to you. So it's good to hear that he seems to be kind of understanding it and getting it and moving forward, because it's a big deal with him being able to stay at that position. Some of the other guys, Heiberger, I've heard has been doing some nice things. I don't know what that means. I think he's going to be a special team guy this year. I'd be shocked. That room's pretty deep.
Wow, we're pretty loaded there.
Yeah, it sounds like Witt is a little banged up right now, and hopefully it's nothing major with him.
Yikes.
He's had a pretty productive camp, and it might be just one of those things where they're just taking it easy on him so that he doesn't, make it a bigger injury than what it already is. But he's a guy who I think needs to get in these at least a couple more practices yet in the spring, and then build on it heading into the summer and fall, because I think he could add and be a really nice piece in the 2-deep Witt. So yeah,
a healthy Witt can be really special for us.
Yeah, if it comes together for him, yeah, Witt. Yeah, Zach Bartz sounds like Witt was in an arm sling. Yeah, that's what I had heard too. So if it's hopefully nothing major with him, who knows what the issue is? We'll find out hopefully over the next couple of practices, and it might just simply be writers telling us whether he's, has a sling on still or whether he's actually participating. But we'll see what it is going forward. It could be precautionary. Who knows? Hopefully it's nothing big.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, the last thing we need is for that guy to have yet another injury.
Nobody deserves to be on the field more than him.
Oh, yes. I mean, absolutely. This was another name I was going to bring up. Zach Bart says, sounds like McGowan had some moments as well and has been viewed as a decent receiving threat for us. I think the tight end room's kind of shaping up nicely. I mean, it really is. And we're going to have an over-under to talk about that in a minute. But I
was going to say, you mean the guy that I called and said was going to be the receiving stud for the tight ends?
How did I know that was going to be the next comment that came out of your mouth? Hey, yeah, listen, you called it. I mean, I'll give it to you. All right, we're going to do some over and unders now. The football over and unders, way too early, but we're going to have a little fun with this. When you're reading stuff about spring practice and you see who's doing well and who's not, it's just fun to talk about football. So we're going to have some fun with this. All right, so we're going to do some over unders. Justin, I have Ryan's answers as well. He was texting me before the show. He couldn't join tonight. I asked him if he wanted to, but he gave me his answers. Okay. So we're going to give ours, and then put yours in the chat as well. So we'll flash those back up there as well. Let's start at the quarterback position. Tyler Van Dyke, Justin, over or under 2,800 passing yards. For frame of reference for everyone, his last 3 years at Miami. The first one, the big one, was 29-31. Then he had 18-35. Then last year, 27-03. We as a team had 2,800 last year. So Justin, over under 2,800 passing yards, TBD.
If he's healthy, it will be over 28. I think he gets over 3 if he's healthy.
To be fair, you also said Mordecai would get over 3.
I did. To be fair, had he been healthy, who knows? I mean, we had 2,800 yards with him missing games, and it's not like you got massive production from Braden Locke. So, you look at it, and there's a chance he could have had 3,000 yards.
Yeah, I'm going over on this as well. Just because I thought about going the under here, just because at Wisconsin, of course, we're going to run the ball a lot. When you got Walker, you've got Malusi, like there's a lot of threats back there. So that always tends to lean me towards taking the under on passing yards, especially at this school. We haven't had a ton of years in the last like 20 that we have over 3,000 yard passer, just a few. That being said, I do think Tyler Van Dyke is going to be successful in the Longo system. We talked about the slot guys and how much they're going to be involved. So I would agree, and I would say taking the over.
I just want to make the point too.
Yeah.
I just think that the offense was so bad last year that people need to understand if it's better this year, there's going to be more opportunity, which means there's probably going to be more production that's kind of hidden. You know, we averaged 23 points a game last year. If we get closer to 30, there's going to be an extra possession or two a game that we didn't have last year, or more of the possessions that we have are actually going to have somewhat level of being productive.
The chat's pretty split here. We've got some unders, we've got some overs. I'm just flashing those up a little bit there. Let's go to the next one. Talk about touchdowns here. Tyler Van Dyke, over or under 20 passing touchdowns. The last 3 years he was in Miami, 25, 10, 19 was his last season, but he's got Longo. Over under 20 passing touchdowns. Justin, where are you at?
I think I will go over on this. When you had it at 19, I was talking with Ryan about this the other day, and I'm like, if he's solid, he could be 20 to 22 touchdown passes in that range, and that's a solid season. Like, I'm not looking for him to crank up to 30 here, but I think if he's pretty good this year, that should be a reasonable number. Like, it's not off the charts for him to have 20 touchdown passes. This is going to be a passing game that if we throw it around a little bit, shouldn't be that hard to get there.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here, and so Ryan's going over on this as well. I think one of the things is you kind of have to go. It's almost like if you're going over on one, you got to go over on the other. I'm actually going to go under on this one because I think our offensive line is going to be pretty good. You actually mentioned that a few minutes ago. So when that happens, I feel like we're going to get some solid rushing touchdown numbers out of our backs. So I think I'm going to go under on this. I think TVD is going to have a good year, and I think he's going to be good. But I would just say the yards are going to be there. I'm right around like 18, 19 touchdowns for him. So we'll see. I mean, I'd be more than happy to be wrong about this. We've got under from Tyler Strieber. Zach says, I'll go over 20. Michael Wagner says over. Mike D says better running game. All right, so let's move on. Running is actually what we talk about next. Let me just move this comment up. Sorry. And all right, so we are going to go with Chez Malusi. Over or under 10 rushing touchdowns. Now here's why I chose 10, by the way. Chez had 4 in 4 games last year. He only played 4 games because he got injured, of course, the Purdue game, but he had 4 touchdowns in 4 games. He likely is our starter. Obviously, we're going to be splitting some time there with Tawi. Over under 10 touchdowns. Justin, what do you think? I'm actually going to go. I'll take this one first. I'm going to go over on this. I know a lot of people are going to say under in the chat because people are going to say, well, he's got to stay healthy. I hear you on this. I think this guy has had way too many freakish injuries. He deserves he's year brittle. Of not getting hurt. And you know what? I'm going to say that this is the year he's not going to get hurt. And I think he does go over because Malusi has been so good for us. I think everyone was, honestly, when he came in from Clemson, the production that this guy has given us, how balanced he is and how well he runs, about how hard he runs. He can be a threat out of the backfield receiving. I'm really happy with this guy. And if he can stay healthy, I think he can go over. Everyone in the chat is saying under. I see all of your comments here. I hope you all are wrong because but let me ask you this, all the people in the chat, like, so Ryan says, yes, if he stays healthy, over. Ryan Willie. Ryan Herrings went under on this. Justin, where are you?
I'm under. And like low key, I flat out said, I just don't think Malusi is as good as what people think he is. I brought up stats when we were in the Discord, and I said 17 of the 22 games he's played, he's been under 5 yards per carry. And it's not like we're playing Ohio State and Iowa every week. That's a lot of games to not even be able to get to 5.
He's been awfully productive for us, Justin. Come on.
Has he? He got carried last year by the Buffalo game. Otherwise, the other 3 games were all under 5. And most of them were low 4. So
I mean,
low 4 in this offense is not a good number. I'm just saying. I want him to have a good year, but from a production standpoint, he's just not a guy that typically ends up averaging high yards per carry in games where he's consistently getting the ball. Now, I think that he may get to 8 or 9 touchdowns, but I don't think he's going to get to 10. And I honestly think Tywee ends up being the guy who ends up being more of the bell cow. And you're going to have some of these other backs that are going to get sprinkled in. Atuka's had a pretty good camp so far. I think there's a chance that Dylan Jones is going to be really good once he gets here. I think he's got the most – he's going to be the flashy one. Like, I think Tywee has a chance to be solid. I think Dylan Jones has a chance to come in and be like a dude day one. And I think then you still have Dupree, who's kind of be your Swiss Army knife, where it's
we'll
like
see how much those guys play, though. I mean, we'll see.
It's
right?
not going to be like
that's
of those. I think Dupree's going to play the least, but I think he's going to be some interesting things we're going to see with him just because of his skill set.
I think Malusi will be the starter. He averaged 4.7 yards a carry in 21. He ran for 815 yards. So I mean, that's not bad. Like listen, come on.
In the Wisconsin offense, 4.7 isn't good.
It's
bad.
I mean, it's
not. I compared him to Clement and to Dare, and I'm like, but they both had better careers so far than him. They were both significantly. They both averaged in at least 2 out of 3 years over 5 yards a carry, and that's not something that Chaz can say.
Well, I'm going over. And I'm going to be right about this. Will Pauling, let's go to receivers. Will Pauling, over or under 68 receptions. Last year, Will Pauling had 74. Ryan Herrings took the over on this. Where are you?
A good number. It's going to be very in that ballpark.
I like this number. I'm proud of this number.
I think there's a chance here that he could have slightly less catches but more yardage this year, because I do think we're going to be able to spring him a little bit more. Oh man, that's tough. If he gets to 70, I don't think it's going to be like well over it. Like, the numbers are going to be more balanced this next year. They just are.
I think they are too.
Quarterback. It would be different if it was Mordecai again, because he's clearly the guy that Mordecai trusts the most. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's the guy that Van Dyke and Locke trust the most. I think he gets to 65. I think it's going to be a really good number again. I think he could be 65 and like 900 yards. But I don't think he's going to get to 70 catches or 69 catches this year.
So the chat is pretty split. We've got some overs, we've got some unders. Evan Malone says under because of Trech. I also say under on this. Ryan Herrings again went over on this. I think that, like, he had 74 last year. He had a great year. 68 is a lot of catches, but for me, it's one more year for all these other guys in his system, right? So like, you're right about Mordecai. He obviously used the safety valve there. Trech is going to get some of these catches, no doubt. But I think Bryson Green has a big year. I think you can look at Quincy Burrows. You can look at Vinny Anthony. You can look at, there's a lot of guys out there that are going to play. You've also got Tyrell Henry. Don't forget about him. So I think that, and we're not going to have as many drops, hopefully, as we had last year. Thanks, Skylar Bell, for making me look like an idiot.
The one caveat I will have to this is he really wasn't productive until like week 5 last year. So it is one of those things where you look at it, it's like, there is a pretty easy route here where he averaged like 7-8 catches a game down the stretch.
I mean, he could blow this number out of the water.
He very well could. I'm not even denying that. Totally. It's just one of those things I look at it and I'm like, there's a chance that Trech really is a dude and they are borderline neck and neck with each other, because unlike Bell last year, Trech is not dropping those passes.
No, he's getting good separation too. All right, this is one that I really like. I'm going to go first on this one. Bryson Green, over under 36 catches. Last year, Bryson had 32. I'm going over on this. I love Bryson Green. Ryan Herrings went under. I don't know why, but listen, I think Bryson Green is really ridiculously talented. We saw that at the end of last year. We saw that in flashing here and there. He's our number one outside threat, in my opinion. Yes, we've got slot threats. There's no doubt about that. He is the top outside threat. TVD, by the way, can throw the deep ball pretty well. So I expect that to be something that's in the repertoire for Bryson Green as well. To me, over 36 catches. I'm seeing, again, a lot of mixes here. Some over, some under from the chat. Justin, where are you at? He had 32 last year, 36 for Bryson Green.
This is the biggest one that is probably the most complicated because so much of what his production is going to be is probably dependent upon what Pauling is and what Williams is this year, and even Anthony. Like if those guys are capable of pushing things and are actually make a jump, then it's going to be harder. Like you're not going to probably be throwing to him as much. He probably, from a speed standpoint, is behind every one of those guys. And if you're looking at the deep threat, it's really going to be one of those things where it may just end up being whoever's capable of beating their man. It's kind of a tough spot because I think like if he had 32 last year, it wouldn't shock me if he's around 35. I'm going to take the under, but I think it's going to be really close. But I do think his yardage jumps up a little bit. I think he's going to be 15 to 16 yards a catch this year because I think he will be more explosive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Van Dyke in general has shown based off his career that he's willing to take shots. And that was something that Mordecai really wasn't comfortable with last year. So Green is going to get some opportunities. So is Pauling and so is Williams and the other guys. I would like to know more about what's actually going on with that other opposite of him spot. Because it sounded like Williams was playing really well at first. Now it sounds like Pauling is suddenly, or not Pauling out. Burrows is suddenly pushing. Mm-hmm. And it's I have no idea who's going to be at that spot day one.
I mean, there's a lot of options, right? You got Henry, you've got Williams, obviously Burrows. Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a chance Burrows blows up this year and suddenly he's a 35 catch guy, and you're looking at it like, okay, well, he just ate into whatever Green was going to take because he's more of a deep threat. Like he's got probably the best long speed of anybody on the team.
All right, sticking with the offense, we're going to go the tight end group in general. So last year, the tight end group had 3 receiving touchdowns. Tight ends over under 6 receiving touchdowns as a unit, as a group. What do you think?
I'm going to say under. I think it's going to be around 5. But I think the issue here is that with 2 really good slot receivers, this is going to be such a situational dependent position where it probably gets more play if we're close to goal line for those guys because a couple of them are going to be guys who are capable of kind of boxing out a defender and putting themselves in that position to make a catch. I'm not sure how effective Pauling and Trech are going to be down near the goal line. Things get so clustered up down there that it's hard to get.
They don't really have the size. Yeah.
And I think a guy like McGowan, who's a really good receiver and has some decent size, has an opportunity to be able to make some plays. I think some of the other guys there have, obviously have some physical tools too that are going to be really helpful. So yeah, it could be one of those things that's really going to depend how often we end up inside the 10.
Zach Bart says, I'll go Oh, that was the other one. Let's see. Winnie Gambler says under. Zach says over. Easton Park says under. Mike D says over 7 receptions for a touchdown. And then Michael Wagner and the 19th Warrior also say over. I'm going to go under on this. This was tough for me, actually. I really wanted to go over, but I just feel like
it's going to be see what the offense is this year.
It's going to be exactly. And I think the tight end group is going to be improved. Okay. McGowan, there's a lot of people out there. Obviously, you still got Nowakowski, you've got C. Greaves. Like there's people that can do this, but I think it's going to be close. And I would love for it to be wrong. I'd love for it to be 8 or 9. I'm going to go under. I also agree with you on 5. And I wanted to set the number at 5, but then I just was going to push. So I'm like, I have to set it at something. You have to go over and under because we don't allow pushes on this. So yeah, I'm going to go under on this, but who knows? We'll be right. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Rico Hallman had 7 interceptions last year. What will he do this year? I'm setting it right at 7. Ryan Herrings took the under.
I'm taking the under.
You're taking the under. Okay. I mean,
I think that is a really difficult number to get to.
It is.
If you get north of 3 or 4, it's a really big season. I don't know if he is not a Fletcher type cornerback where he's just a ball hawk. He was productive, but I think there's a chance that he's only got like 3 or 4 this year. He could still be really good. I just don't think he's the type of guy that's that type of freak show where he's just that big of a playmaker. He's opportunistic, but I don't think he's a guy who's going to go up and take it away from somebody.
I agree under. I probably should have set this. If I set it at 4, what would you take?
I'd probably push on that. I think he gets to 4.
I probably should have done 4 or 5. I just put down last year's number to figure out, but you're right. He is going to go under pretty much everyone in this. So let's just do this. So TJ says should be over under 3.5. I would take the over on this. Would you take the over?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fair. So that's on me. I put a should have better number, but this is another one. The next one I'm going to have is also a number from last year, which you might surprise me with my answer. I might surprise you with my answer. Hunter Wohler, over or under 120 tackles, which is, by the way, what he had last year, 120 tackles last year. I'm going to go first on this. People may say he's not going to have that happen again. Oh, yes, he will. I'm saying over for Hunter Wohler because listen, that man is a machine, okay? He's arguably one of the best safeties in all of college football. I understand that it's a big number and he's got to be healthy. And of course, if all these numbers mean nothing, if the guys aren't healthy, like this is assuming he stays healthy. But if he's healthy for a 12-game season, I think he absolutely can average 10 tackles a game because he's basically in on every freaking play. The guy is all over the field constantly. And yeah, so when he averages under because the better guys around him, maybe, but he is better than everyone around him. And he is always, and he's 1 year older. He's got one more year of development. I think Hunter Wohler is such a disruptive football player. I'm going to go over on the 120 tackles. Tell me I'm wrong, Justin.
I'm going to go under, and I'm going to say there's a chance it's only like 90.
Oh, come on.
I'm being serious. I think that the talent level around him and the speed around him is going to be the bigger deal. There's going to be far more guys able to chew up ground around him than what there was last year. That does not mean that he will not have an incredible season. I still think he'll be highly productive and be a really good player. I just don't think he's going to have to work so hard in this defense with the guys that are going to be around him, especially at the linebacker position. The middle linebackers, we effectively went from having like a street paver to having a Ferrari, a couple of Ferraris in there. So you're going from guys who probably ran in the 4.8, 4.9 range to a couple of guys who are probably in the 4.6, 4.5 range. In Tackett, and Chaney's probably a 4.6 guy. I think that you probably had Jaheim Thomas is probably a 4.6 guy. He might even be high 4.5s. You have Sebastian Cheeks, who's a 4.5, 4.6 guy. Like Allegro is a 4.6 guy. That room is so loaded with athletes now that are going to be out of there on the field, kind of closing up some of the space that he had to cover last year, that it's going to be far easier.
I hear the argument about, better talent around, and that's fair. Ryan also went under on this. All right, here's the bonus question. This is not an over-under. This is a bonus question. I'm curious as to your thoughts, and of course, everyone is in the chats as well. Who will be the team's second leading tackler? So I'm assuming that Hunter Wohler will be the leading tackler, which maybe you don't disagree with that. But go ahead and give me your top two, Justin, tacklers on the team. I'll give you Ryan's answer first. He agreed that Hunter Wohler. He says second leading tackler is Jaheim Thomas. What do you think is your second leading tackler?
It's Jaheim Thomas. That's who I had too. I think he's going to, of the guys at that middle linebacker position, I think he's the guy that's going to be he's not going to lead the field because he's got the most experience, and he's also the guy that probably, from a physical tool standpoint, he's got the best combination there. So I think that he'll be out there a ton.
I agree. I'm going to go, I think Tom, it's hard to I'm going to just go someone else because you guys have both already said Thomas. So I'm going to say Tackett Curtis because I think he is really going to be a monster in there, and we'll see how much time they split at that position and how many plays he's in there for.
That's what's going to come down to it is does Thomas come off the field or is it Tackett and Chaney are swapping?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think you're probably right, Juan Thomas, but I just wanted to play devil's advocate there. Michael Wagner throws in a little another one in there, and he says, "Who leads the team in sacks?" Justin, what do you think about this one?
I'm going to go Leon Lowry with an outside shot to Pius, and it's going to be one of those two guys.
I'm going Pius. I think Pius looks like he looks like a bit of a.
It's to me it's 1A and 1B with those two. Neither one of them would shock me to be the top guy.
Pius looks like a game wrecker, and it's fun. Boy, I tell you what, isn't it fun to talk about football again, man? Just golly. Because after even a little bit of basketball, it just brings you down. But, hey.
Here we go. We got to follow up. How many?
For what? For which one? What are we talking about?
For sacks.
Sacks. Okay. Pius is going to lead the team in sacks, and I'm going to say he has. Ooh, boy. I'm going to say 6.
Okay. That's close. I was going to say 7. So for Lowry. So I think it's right in that ballpark. I don't think there's going to be anybody that's one of our freak show guys that goes out there and gets 10 or 11 that we've had in the past. Until we see these guys play, I have no idea what to expect. I have no idea how this scheme stacks up compared to what we had in the past with pass rushing and how we're stunting and doing some of the things that we're doing, whether these guys will have it. I do think they're far better athletically at bending the edge than what we had last year.
Yeah. Well, this is a lot of fun. It was good to go with some over-unders, and we'll be doing more of this kind of fun football stuff as spring progresses, of course, and into the total off season when there's no football, which is going to be really sad until the fall, but it's coming before we know it. Final thoughts, Justin, before we close the show today.
5 more practices. Enjoy them while they're here. It's going to be a long, quiet time, but guess what? We're going to be diving into official visits at the end of next month. So,
which once again,
the 31st or June 2nd is the first official visit weekend, and it is a big one. There are a lot of dudes, and that is the focus weekend for the Badger staff. They will flat out bring in all their plan A's in that weekend and try to close. They want the first shot, and they want to close the door.
Yeah, it's important to do that. Which, Justin has like Christmas all throughout the year. This is just one of his other, Christmas white type weekends. So we'll obviously do a lot of coverage of that when the time comes. There were well over 100 of you watching us live. Thank you so much for all that. Thanks for the comments. If you're going to listen to this show later, if you like what we do, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much. As always, we'll be back again next week on Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.